morning and welcome to a new week of the new normal here on Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines of the stories make New Haven tick. Soto makes our city and our state tick in so many ways, and he's on the other line here on Zoom to fill us in on some personal, some business, and some statewide updates, all related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Good morning, Pedro, and it's so good to have you back.
Thanks. I'm glad to be back.
So the three things we're going to talk about today: Pedro himself has just recovered from, I hope he's fully recovered from COVID-19.
Just about there.
He is serving on the Governor's Reopen Connecticut task force, helping the greatest minds of our state figure out how we get back to our workplaces and public gathering spaces. And he runs a company, High Grade, that makes aerospace components, and talking to him about how they're keeping the lines moving during the pandemic. So Pedro, tell me about, and I'm so sorry you got it. When did you come down with COVID-19 and how did you find out?
So it was about April 4th or 5th. So that weekend on Sunday morning, I woke up and I had a cough, a slight cough, a dry cough. And I said, well, this is one of the symptoms, but maybe it's not anything and I feel okay. And, I don't have anything else. I was going to go to work. Wiser minds at home prevailed to have
on Sunday.
On Monday. I was going to go in on Monday.
Okay.
Decided to stay home. And that Monday, my symptoms did start getting worse.
What kind of symptoms did you get? Because it's weird. Now we're hearing about the toe. Seems like there are all these different symptoms that people might even be affected differently by it.
Yeah, it really. I mean, in my personal case, I started feeling just sick. Feeling achy, not feeling, that great. And that afternoon, it's going back a month. It's a little hazy. I did start to have a low fever. So it went up about a degree or two. The next day, it did go up to about 100.4.
Whoa, 100.4 or 104?
100.4, yeah. So it wasn't major, but it was enough that I was concerned. And so, I talked to my doctor, did a telemedicine thing. He said, "Yep, you've got it."
How is he so sure you got it with 100.4 and a dry cough?
He said, you're fitting like three of the symptoms. He said, right now I'm going to assume that you have it. And he said that, I said, should I get tested? So this was an interesting thing, is that he said that I'm not going to have you tested. That there are a lot of tests, there's kind of a run on tests. I'm just going to assume that you have it. And, you're going to stay out for 2 weeks. I had an acquaintance of mine who said, no, you should get tested. It was in his power to help me get a test. So that Wednesday I did get a test. I did the drive up nasal swab.
What was that like? Like, I know this sounds silly, but I always think I wouldn't want it. I don't like people sticking things in my nose.
Then you really wouldn't want this. Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, like everyone was in their hazmat suits. You kind of drive up, you had a time to go. I think I went at like 1:45 or something. I got all ready, got dressed, put my mask on, went in, everyone was in their hazmat suits. You couldn't lower your window down. You had to kind of show your ID through the window. And, so the nasal swab is basically all the way to the back of your nose. So it's in your right nose. It's always the right. And my right eye was tearing. It's uncomfortable. It's not fun.
But it's fast, right? Like 10 seconds.
It felt like 30, but yeah.
Really?
Only 10. I think it is 10, but it's a long 10. But in terms of
which one did you go to, Pedro? Was it Long Wharf?
It was the one at Long Wharf. Yep, the Yale one at Long Wharf. I got my positive results on Saturday, so I did get a positive confirmation. But in terms of my symptoms, I mean, that week I just got worse and worse for a few days. I had, like I said, the cough, the fever, full body just aches, fatigue, a lot of fatigue. I had no energy. And I was, I mean, I couldn't sleep at night because this is something that other people say that their legs just started throbbing and aching.
I
And so,
haven't heard about the leg. Not about for some people, it feels like there's something so heavy in your chest, which is similar to pneumonia in that way. I know this isn't exactly pneumonia, but some people have such trouble breathing, which is
yeah.
upsetting. Did you have trouble breathing?
Um, so I didn't. So it was, so the interesting thing, I can kind of walk through by the end of the week, my fever had broken, and I was just still exhausted. Um, my my right lung, and I actually had pneumonia about 15 years ago, and this is the exact same thing that happened. My right lung got really sore, um, and I did have shortness of breath at the end of
I
that.
remember that for pneumonia. When I had pneumonia, I guess about 30 years ago, I felt I was dying. Like I really told myself I wasn't even upset. I just said, okay,
Yeah,
I'm dying. That's what
right,
pneumonia
right.
felt like. Yeah.
So you can see I still have a dry cough. It is not the same dry cough as I had at the beginning, but um, my so my lung got was right lung ended up just getting very sore, feeling very heavy. Over the course of the second week of my quarantine, I did start just feeling slowly better. Energy levels never really got back to more than maybe 70-80%. Most of the other symptoms had cleared up. But on the third week, I did get a chest X-ray because my right lung was still bothering me, and I still felt short of breath. Although I did have fortunate to be able to get a pulse oximeter, and that confirmed the entire time that my oxygen levels were never in a critical stage.
Did you ever feel you might have to go to the hospital? Because I know one thing people wrestle
Oh,
with is going to the hospital might be a nightmare these days. You have to
yeah.
go, but like it's pretty good
I
if you don't
never,
have
I
to.
never felt that I needed to go to the hospital, especially once I got the pulse oximeter that showed that my oxygen levels were never below like 95%. I
And did
never,
you feel in any ways, like how old are you, Pedro?
I'm 43.
Did you feel like maybe you're lucky that you get now you're immune, or we don't even know if people are going to end up being immune for how long?
Yeah, I mean, the one tiny silver lining is that I'm through this. The rest of my family never had any symptoms.
Really? Did you barricade yourself from the
I did.
family?
I
Or?
barricaded myself for 2 weeks in my bedroom and hardly left it. And definitely was maintaining distance. Now, the week before though, we didn't. And I certainly, the asymptomatic transfer is one of the key things. So, until this antibody test gets really nailed down and people can really definitively say whether that they've had it or not, I
If
think
it'll
it's,
get to definitive,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, my gut feeling is that they had it, they were asymptomatic, and they're done. But
yeah.
we just don't know.
And were you running your company at all while you were sick those 2 weeks?
I was.
What
It
were you
was
able to do?
um, email, a few phone calls. I have a really good team here, and I mean on the company side, it was a scary week. We had other people also fall ill with COVID. So we
How
had
many other people there fell
we had
ill?
three other people get it, and all of them are recovering. All of them are still home, but they're all feeling better slowly at different stages.
So three the
Um,
same week you got it, Pedro?
within days, yeah, within
So you think
days.
you got it from each other?
Yeah, that's the most likely scenario. The
And
exact fact,
you think everybody was exposed and that just you're the only four?
I don't think so. I mean, we all worked pretty closely together in terms of office. It was all office employees. No one on the shop floor actually got it. Um,
Oh,
and on the shop floor, we had instituted social distancing pretty early, so the chances are that that was successful. Um, and so but a very scary time at the company. I mean, I was knocked out, and then all of a sudden, people start dropping my flies, like flies 3 days in, 4 days in, someone else. So what got us through that really was, I think, I gave everyone the opportunity to stay home, um, and many people did. We were on a skeleton crew for that week. And I gave people information as to, this is what's happening. This is where the infections were. These are the people that might have been exposed. Monitor your symptoms. If you need to stay home, please stay home. And as the week progressed and as no other symptoms kind of showed up, people felt a lot more comfortable returning back to work. And so by the next week, people were coming back. And as of now, except for the people that are still ill, everyone is back.
Oh, that's great. And we're talking to Pedro Soto, who's also back. He's the, I guess, CEO of Aerospace Components. He lives in Westville. He's gotten over COVID-19. I'm so glad you got over it in a way that wasn't more damaging. Yes. And he's also, to segue into how people get back to work, he is a member of Governor Lamont's Reopen Connecticut Advisory Group, pretty high-powered group. So we're talking to someone pretty high-powered here by osmosis.
Apparently, so, yeah.
But you are someone who's been very involved in civic groups and business leadership in New Haven. So how did you get involved in this task force? This is very interesting stuff. The whole country's wrestling with these questions.
Yeah, I think I was asked partially because I'm a small business owner in manufacturing, and also because I'm the president of the Aerospace Component Manufacturers Association. So kind of, I think that combination made sense for them to ask to have me on the committee. It's been, it's getting busier. It's been quite an experience. I do think, obviously, and this is something that I'm sure, you're aware of, the committee sort of meetings themselves are off the record, confidential. They're attempting to take information and they want to kind of push it out from the top as things go. And the deliberations, not that there's serious deliberation right now. And in my committee, it's a lot of advisory information. We're getting information. They're showing us kind of what the plan is, and we're giving our candid feedback. And I think that I will say that, the epidemiologists and the scientists are leading the charge. And we should be using that sound science then with layering on top how what the guidelines are going to be for business. So it is going.
And that's obviously been a national debate here.
Yeah.
It's amazing how in the last couple of weeks this has turned into a red-blue dynamic again politically in this country. I was thinking maybe we get a break from this.
Yeah.
Basically, the red state people say, and the kind of right-wing groups, militia groups, aided and abetted openly by the president and his attorney general, say open everything up, don't wear masks if you don't want to, be right next to if you don't want to, this is our individual freedom.
Yeah.
And then you got the blue states saying you can affect everybody else, you're not dealing with science. I saw one last night. I was looking at a study in New York Magazine about the trends, and they say that if we don't maintain the current level of social distancing, a place like even New Haven will have the next peak this summer be 4 times as high as the current one.
Yeah.
And we're going to be at hundreds of thousands of deaths. Now, people could be wrong, obviously. Where are you guys on this debate? I mean, we're going to be reopening partly on the 21st, I believe it is, in May. You've been open the whole time, except for this 1 week you guys got COVID in your factory.
Yeah. And we were open then. We were open then, too.
You were essential workers. Do you think we're going to be able to go back pretty crowded in beaches and go to restaurants and have, like, I'm very nervous about opening my workplace because we all work so close together in an office.
Right. It's going to be in stages. Reopening is going to be slow. It's going to be very careful. I believe Governor Lamont unveiled kind of the proposal on this, the red, yellow, green, blue, or red, orange, yellow, green.
What is that? This makes me think like after 9/11.
It's going to be similar.
How far should I duck? It's a blue alert, so I'll go on my knees.
Yeah, right. We're at
red
elevated. I think we've remained at elevated. I don't think we ever got to green in 20 years. But I think that the way it's going to work is every industry is going to basically have a level of risk where a certain level of attendant activity is going to be assigned to it. So if you're at a red, like I said, I believe this is public. Otherwise, I will probably be getting an email very soon. But it's going to be
I saw something about color coded. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what's going to happen is that like a restaurant will open on red, right, and then What's going to happen is as the scientific metrics that are dictated start improving, then the level of risk will be able to increase, and then the level, the industry will step down. So it's going to be on an industry basis. It won't be a global, I think there might be a global number, but for Connecticut, it'll be like hair salons will open at red. Maybe in a few weeks they can go to orange, which will mean this level of protection and distancing. And then, in a few more weeks, it'll go to yellow and then eventually to green. And
Pedro, do you think it's realistic by the summer? Most people are going to be back in the office. People are going to be eating in restaurants. The stores are going to be crowded again.
I don't know. I think May will be very instructive. I think that
and then how much will these state rules you guys are helping the governor come up with dictate city rules? Like we do things, we're the only nation deciding not to do this as a nation. We have states competing with states for equipment, the president getting a better deal on equipment to outbid the states to get the equipment. But states are trying to work together as a region. 7 states just formed a coalition to get supplies together for food. We were kind of ahead of Connecticut and New Haven by a few days, at least, on some of our social distancing orders. Will New Haven basically be doing what Governor Lamont and your council say, or will there be additional restrictions they might put on or want to put on?
It's a good question. And I don't know. We haven't really, at least in our committee, talked about what individual cities will be doing. Cities obviously are the hotspots by and large. And so there may be additional rules for them.
When I look at New Haven County, it seems like New Haven might be a hotspot, but it's not the same proportion that I see in places like Atlanta, New York City.
No.
Seems like the suburbs are pretty much keeping up with us. I mean, you have that nursing home in East Haven, so maybe the sample set is so small.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and our cities are artificially kind of constrained and tiny in terms of geography. But I do think that the social distancing that Connecticut has done has worked. It does work. This thing works. And the other thing in terms of it becoming a political football, it is really unfortunate. I think this is like a lot of our politics these days, is that for a certain kind of segment of the population, which, it could be across political spectrums. I'm not going to say who or what, but unless it happens to me or my immediate family, it's not a concern, right? That's kind of the way I think a lot of people feel. But, you get this thing, or you have someone who, if you have parents, I mean, I've had, several of my friends have had their parents pass away from this thing. I mean, my father passed away 2 years ago of COPD, and there's no way he would have gotten through this. I mean, it's just, it does, there's a sense of a lack of empathy in terms of what this is, because it's being shown as, well, it's less critical than the flu or this or that, and it's not. I will say I have been sicker in my life. I have had 103-degree fever, and I've been, out and with fevers and shakes for 2 days, with either an ear infection or something like that. But I have never felt like this. 2 weeks of just exhaustion. And the fact that people are feeling even worse, they're on ventilators. This doesn't happen with the flu. All of a sudden you have this mass, it's the flu season and everyone's rushing to the hospital on ventilators. So, I mean, this really is a serious thing. Thank God people have the ability to think it's not a serious thing, because there is an asymptomatic factor, and because they're not getting it because of social distancing. I mean, it's kind of the conundrum. If this works too well and if it actually fizzles out, people will say that all this work was for nothing, when in fact the work did it.
Well, the way I think some of us are worried about now is, and none of us knows, right? Yeah. So Sweden's gone, even though they're a liberal country, they're going the way the Tea Party wants, right? They're having everybody out in public, and their old people are dying pretty heavily, but everyone's doing okay. But then you have like some countries like Indonesia where they are hit, but other high countries aren't. So there's so much we still don't know, and there's so many fears that we're going to have a big second hit of this. In this, without divulging any of the top secret cone of silence restrictions on your Reopen Connecticut Commission, were there any moments you had, or any insights you've gleaned from being on this You had a lot of insights from running a company, had a lot of insights from having the disease. Then when you're in a room talking more theoretically, but looking at the big picture, has your thinking evolved on what we need to do as a society based on that?
I think this is going to take longer than I originally thought. I think that getting back to whatever normal counts at, I would say getting back to March 1st, getting back to February is a long way off. It really is going to be. There may be some areas in the country where it comes back, where this kind of fizzles out quicker because of, just population density or things like that. And that's great. But I think in areas that have been hit hard, this return to normal is going to take a while. And I think it's going to be
Well, one theory is that it's the other places that, let's say in Georgia, the governor of Georgia kind of, a lot of us can look back, I think, and say he did this too early because the numbers went up so high already since he did
Right.
this. Will they infect other places? So how much can we control our fate in Connecticut? You even mentioned that within the state. And by the way, I didn't mean to contradict you. You're
That's
100% right. I'm told that like Eastern Connecticut, rural Connecticut, they do have lower rates right now.
Yeah.
How much can, within the state or within the country, can some of us try to protect our populations from unnecessary extra death if half the country just lets this thing run wild again?
If travel restrictions are broadly lifted and air travel starts back to the degree where people are going, multi-state, that will definitely be a scary time. Now, of course, and airports are creatures of the federal government, so that is not an insignificant concern.
The federal government's in favor of everybody just going back to the old way.
Right. Now,
they're suing local elected officials, the federal government, when they're trying to make their rules.
But I think at some point the numbers become the numbers, right? I mean, if Atlanta or if Georgia does have an outbreak and numbers start getting bad, this people will be feeling this. It isn't a theoretical thing. So if all of a sudden, like I said before, if all of a sudden, sorry, my phone's ringing. We'll have to ignore that. I can't reach it. I can't. Hold on. So if if we have any sort of major outbreaks where all of a sudden people are freaking out again, they will go back to being fearful. I think fear is the overriding factor, and I think that by and large, if these outbreaks happen, and if the government, if the people feel that the government has lost control, I think that the lockdown procedures will come back, or they'll just be hospitals get full, and there'll be panic. I will say one thing about the Reopen Connecticut Committee is that I feel one of the overriding factors, which is a positive, is a sense that we really want this to be kind of a one-way street. While there's always going to be a way to pull back and a way to redo our kind of scale back up our social distancing or scale back up. The sense that if we reduce the lockdown and then have to lock back down again is kind of the disaster scenario, to have to go back. So everything is being done with a sense that we can stage ourselves carefully to get out of this, rather than go so quickly that we're going to be kind of bouncing back and forth. I think
you said the numbers are the numbers, and I know a lot less about this than you do. So just know you're talking to a journalist who's asking questions as though I know stuff. I don't really know stuff. It's my job. Stalin said, and I think he was right, that one death is a tragedy. Mary died. That's someone's grandmother. That's your wife. It's your kid. 1 million people dying is a statistic. People become inured to it. So we originally heard it was going to be hundreds of thousands. President Trump said it'll be almost nobody. It'll be done by April. Then he said it'll be done by Easter. Then he said we're definitely not going to get over 60,000. Now we've passed 60,000 before we've even finished the first wave. So if we're at a peak, theoretically, we're going to double what we've had so far before getting the peak. So now he went on TV yesterday and said, well, I think we might even hit as much as 85,000, 100. That's terrible. I think he's onto something, that people aren't going to think back to what he or the governor of Georgia said about the numbers, because once those numbers are high up, they're just the same numbers, aren't they? Do you think it's really true that if we get to 300,000, 400,000 people, you're still not going to have this White House fueled Tea Party type bankrolled visible minority dictating that we're not going to have a communal response?
I think that will. This is the you know me, I'm an optimist.
Yeah.
Although this is an optimist in a tragic scenario. So my thinking would be, um, you take this pretty seriously once you get it, or once you have family members who've gotten it. If this turns
Mhm.
into something where this spirals out of control for the states that have stopped distancing, and it's a big if, because I think a lot of people are taking it upon themselves to ignore the rules to reopen, to stay home, partially because of fear. And I think that's the whole point. This overriding factor of fear is going to keep a segment of the population home and is going to kind of keep this done. But if people are running out and start getting it, when you get this thing, it is no joke. For X number of people, which in some ways is a bigger tragedy, they get it and they may pass it on to someone who then dies. I mean, but this is a serious thing, and I think that we have to take it seriously, and we need to. I do wish that leadership was focused on getting through this, lowering the numbers rather than making this an economy thing. I mean, a restaurant owner can't reopen if no one wants to come into his or her store,
Right.
or his or her restaurant. It just doesn't work. So it needs to really be something where people don't feel scared leaving their house. The broad number of people, or people don't also feel invincible leaving their house, which is
Right.
sometimes even worse. It needs to be a balance of being able to be out there in public, feeling that people are doing everything in their power to stay safe, until the numbers can get to a point where it's going to be risk, right? There are going to be companies that open on May 20th and will have an outbreak. It's just going to happen. How we react to that and how things happen, and what risk the employees have is definitely going to be how we get through this in one piece.
And Pedro, before we end this segment, what about schools?
I don't know. I'm not on that committee. I mean, they're out until the summer.
Are they? I thought in the state it hasn't been official yet. Is it official?
It is not, and this is my own personal opinion, is I don't think they're coming back
It'd be kind
until.
of helpful if they let people know, right?
Yeah, I think that by the end of hopefully this week or next week, there should be some guidance. But this is my own guess on that. But I
You're
think that
listening to Dateline New Haven on WNHS-FM with one of the people who might have the most varied expertise and relevance to the discussion of COVID-19 in Connecticut, Pedro Soto. He just got over it. Thank God he's okay now. He got it himself. He's on the governor's Reopen Connecticut task force. So he's making policy or advising policy on how we return to our jobs and our communities. And he runs a company called Aerospace Component. High grade precision manufacturing, and runs a statewide organization including Western Mass and aerospace component manufacturers. Harry Jones, our station manager. Do we have any listener questions or comments for Pedro Soto?
Yeah, we have Rodney Williams. He says, why didn't the governor appoint any minorities that represent small minority businesses on the task force? Small minority businesses play a major economic role in the minority community. Then he says, I'm glad you're okay, sir, but most minority businesses aren't in the fields that most task force members make their money. Who is speaking for those on the ground advising the governor? Because if we have no voice, we will exist when they decide to allow us to open our businesses.
That's a great question. And thank you for asking. I will say that there are several minority businesses on the business development committee, including myself, although you're right, I'm not a small, urban micro business. I believe also, Curvin Council is on it as well. The funeral home director in New Haven. And, I think I will say that a lot of the people in the room, one of their biggest concerns is urban small businesses. It's been one of the major things that we have been discussing, is kind of how we reopen in an urban environment. How do we get this back The micro businesses is definitely being pushed on by several representatives in the committee. So this is being discussed. I agree that having probably more representation of some smaller businesses, or a subcommittee of some smaller businesses might have been instructive. I think that they went more with industry representatives. So there is someone who represents restaurants. There is someone who represents trades. There are people who are representing, small businesses as a kind of an association of micro businesses. But I think that, it's a good point. I think that, whenever you put these things together, I think you tend to look kind of on the larger picture. But I will say that that small urban businesses, minority businesses are being specifically discussed as well.
What about the barbershop, Pedro? That's such a tricky one because you see pictures around the country. So many people don't wear the masks. You're right up close. We're all got hair going crazy.
Oh, I know. My hair, I can't wait. I can't wait to go in. My hair salons are one of the first, I believe this is public. I really hope.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, hair salons are going to be on the list of one of the things to be opened with restrictions.
And why is that? Aren't they the most dangerous? I mean, you can be alive cutting your own hair. It's not going to look good.
I think that, I don't know. I don't want to weigh in on why or why not. I think that face masks do present a problem, but I think that they want to give some of these small businesses an opportunity to, given the risk factors, if you have face masks and if you're following proper sanitization, you should be, you can be safe. I think that that's what the epidemiologists are saying. I think if they weren't, they would be kind of speaking louder, saying like hair salons and, hair.
Again, this is where you know so much more. You've been sitting in these meetings. My understanding was that while they want everyone to wear masks, the danger is it gives a false sense of security because unless you have a N95 mask, it's not going to keep the small particles out. It's going to help. But that it becomes an excuse in your own mind to feel safe and not maintain that 6 feet.
So
a barber can't maintain 6 feet.
They cannot. I think that the current thinking on masks is, you're right, the percentage will increase with small particles. If 2 people wear masks and they're close, you are still significantly reducing the risk of infection to a degree where it may be an acceptable thing that you can do. I think that it is hard. I count myself fortunate that I never had to close. My employees are very fortunate. They've I know that they're very happy that we never had to close. I can't believe, it's a really scary thing, I think. And unfortunately, this is kind of another issue with the Paycheck Protection Plan and this money that's supposed to be helping small businesses, how it's almost diametrically opposed to staying closed because of the way that the rules were set up. The original intent was not that. The original intent was to help small businesses be able to weather the storm.
Right, but now you have to spend that money.
Yeah.
What's weird is you have to spend that money right away.
You have 8 weeks and 75% of it has to be on payroll. So if you're closed and you get your loan, you're potentially, if you're a small business, if you're a micro business paying people at a certain rate, your employees are staying home making more money, and you may be having to call them in, making them lose their unemployment and either stay home and do nothing or come into an environment where they may not want to come into yet. That Paycheck Protection Plan, in terms of lost nights of sleep, that thing has been the most, even for me. The rules are being made on a weekly basis. They keep changing. There was a delay on mine. I applied on day 1. I'm getting my money, I think, in the next 2 days. I think actually a phone call came in while we were talking. That was my banker saying, hey, I think the money's ready. It should be showing up in your account soon. And I think that...
and this is the bipartisan comment, because this would have happened just as much with Democrats, given the track record. It is amazing how poorly that was executed and thought out.
The original intent I thought was great. It was, let's use the SBA because they have existing relationships.
Let's use banks because they're set up.
And they're set up to be able to do this. But then the rules and the regulations, and, I'm in a regulated environment. I am all for, rules and regulations. That's what keeps aircrafts up in the air. It's what keeps medical equipment working, right? Is all this stuff. But, this plan, really, I feel it was an intent to pump money into small businesses to keep them alive. And it's turned into this, almost, this paycheck replacement that it needs to go to employees, when in some cases, having your employees on unemployment for several weeks and having the small business owner being able to pay their rent, and to pay off some of their suppliers and to be able to pay debts, and then bring their employees on in 6 weeks may be the best use of this and make that a grant. It's a mess. It's a really big mess. And it's really disappointing because it's also now being used as a political tool, because the states that are reopening, people are getting their PPP money and they're saying, well, we're open, you got to come back to work. And if you don't come back to work, I'm going to fire you. So not only have they lost their unemployment, but now they don't even have a job. So it's really,
it makes me against some of my view, how I would see this on other issues, into a small government person. I think the money should come locally. Like, Rodney Williams, who wrote in, I wish someone like him on the ground in New Haven decided how the money got distributed and what the rules would be and who gets it. Although I have to admit, it worked very well for the independent and WNHH, the PPP, just to be on the record and fair. We got our loan and it helped.
Yeah, and it's going to help my company as well. Absolutely.
So your company has how many employees?
We have 27.
Does that include the office?
Yes.
And how is, besides the fact that no one's gotten sick on the floor, which is amazing, that's great, and the fact that unfortunately some front office people did, but sounds like you really only lost a week or two. How has business been? Are you making what you made at the same amount? Now you got the PPP. How is the pandemic affecting you? I know your organization pivoted, or was going to pivot, to help Young New Haven get some equipment. Did that happen? Is your own company involved?
So that never happened. It was a bit of chaotic situation, but we have been helping on the medical side in terms of rush medical orders that we have been getting from companies, small little widgets and pieces that are critical parts in whatever that they need. So we've been
what kind of stuff around. Like the widgets you make?
Well, what we do is precision grinding and lapping, and so and some machining. And what we usually do is, if there is something that needs to be done to within 1/10 of a thousandth of an inch in accuracy, they'll send it to us because our machines can do that. So it could be everything from some small little, metal washers, or it could be even just plastic pieces that need to fit inside something absolutely perfectly. And so those are the types of components that we've been doing in the last few weeks for some medical suppliers.
Are you aware of what some of the medical machines are getting?
Besides the one I mentioned to you, the Tyson Krupp, I'll have to look, but otherwise I think, I don't really know. We've been trying to find out. I think there were some respirator pieces though that we did work on. And I think that, the other thing as well is, so in terms of going back to your question, in terms of business, we got out of the gate strong. We had the best first quarter that this company has had. I acquired this company last year, but the best first quarter this company has had in I think almost 10 years. So through March, things were good. April, amazingly enough, April was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad, but we did it. And the employees, really pulled together and got the work out. The last month, orders have dried up pretty significantly. It was a 3-week really drought in orders, being about less than half of what we usually were getting over the course of the year. Last week was a blip. Last week looked almost normal. We'll see what this week brings. So, we don't know what the next usually our orders are pretty short term. So we don't have this kind of long-term order outlook, but we're not out of the woods yet. Signs are encouraging, but the next 2 weeks orders can dry back up again.
I would imagine, because I remember you were explaining to me once before about the aerospace industry. They also have cycles where big buyers of planes will have a long time where they don't need to be replaced. Then they need to be replaced, and suddenly you can't keep up with the orders. And also, if I'm Right, correct, Pedro. You're
Yes.
describing two different kinds of markets, right? So
Mhm.
demand for medical machinery pieces, one would assume respirators be way up now.
Yes. Yes.
The aviation industry is tanking. That doesn't mean they don't make long-term investments in a tough environment. Do you have different parts of your business that have opposite reactions to changing economy, changing times, a pandemic?
I am not perfectly diversified, which would be nice, but I do have. So um, my whole kind of thesis with acquiring this business was I was going to make a pretty big pivot into aerospace and into commercial aerospace. That's pretty much off the cards. However, military aerospace is still very busy and never really stopped. And commercial aerospace, however, is going to be absolutely disastrous. This year and next year, it's going to be very bad. And it was something which was not in the cards. I mean, we were in for a super cycle of another 5 years of growth. And now that has gone away. Now the numbers will come back. I think what was a 5-year cycle will be a 10 or 12-year cycle. But things are going to hurt on the aerospace side for a bit. On the military aerospace and the defense side, I think it won't. So that might be a bit of a safe harbor for my company. Medical will be good. The commercial is the wild card. So we do some for automotive. I think that'll be difficult. One of our customers makes golf balls, and they have not slowed down their orders of the parts that they order from us. So I think that it's every month. If you check with me next month, I'll have a better picture. But I think that to the degree also that we have some national clients and there's national markets, things may not be as bad. But I think that it's not going to be what I was hoping was going to be this year. So
Pedro Soto, we're on Dateline New Haven, 103.5 FM live streamed at newhaven.org. Pedro, when you're talking now about the different elements of your business, commercial aviation, military, medical, I think you're touching on something broader again, which is that some of the changes happening short term in the pandemic might become long term.
Mm-hmm.
We've been thinking a lot about that. Will people work as much in the office? Will there be as many in-person meetings or more on Zoom? Will people ever function the way we used to in our families, in our workplaces, in our public spaces? How do you see any and some more accelerated changes, like we're already doing more work at home and this just makes it faster. Certain industries that were hobbling, it just happened faster that they don't do well. What do you see as longer term changes coming out, or accelerated changes to how we live and how we work coming out of this pandemic?
I think to the degree, I feel there's a desire to, I miss going to a restaurant, right? Hanging out with my family at Zupardi's Pizza, going to, quiz night with my dad friends. There's just stuff that we miss, right? Going to a concert. It's just, there is stuff that people are going to want to come back to. So I think there will be a drive to get to that. How long it takes is the question. So this is my own hope. And again, here's the optimist talking, right? Is that, if COVID can kind of disappear or get into the background where it isn't something that's a big deal, where it is something that, we either live with or it just kind of evaporates, then, maybe we will flex back. Maybe we'll have this procedures, all this stuff in place, all the safety stuff in place, so that if an epidemic comes back, we can kind of snap back into preparedness, right? We can, we'll hopefully have the procedures ready so that we can kind of clamp down quickly, say, okay, we're going to do this. It's going to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We're going to just shut things down. It's going to be this is the game plan. Everyone's on board, and we kind of get through it. Look, Asia went through SARS, and obviously, it went away and life returned to normal. And these pandemics, and
then they were better prepared when
they were better prepared. Exactly. So, I really hope that restaurants can be back and that we get back to normal. I think it'll happen.
After 9/11, we did more permanently adopt some of the rituals of an anti-terror state. So it was permanently different when we went to the airport. It's permanently different how we made precautions at school to be ready for stuff. Do you think there might be some permanent social distancing? Because we have a very crowded office at the independent Lavos WNHH, and I love that. will that ever be possible again? Or will there just be a permanent move to coming into an office when you need to meet, but maybe
I think a lot of companies will embrace telework. We'll be doing a lot more remotely.
I don't like it.
I don't like it either. And I think a lot of people don't, right? So I think that, I think that there will be, obviously architecture will be forever changed, just like it was in 9/11. Bollards everywhere and all sorts of security just kind of built in naturally into buildings. Sadly, school shootings is changing, school architecture. So this, it'll be, of course, this will change how it goes, and it'll be baked into our DNA to some degree. This is, I guess it could be gallows humor, but I really do hope that, I like the kind of crowded office space, people working together. I hope kind of the open office space environment might be a thing of the past. I was never a fan of it. I like my personal space.
I love the open office. I hate the idea of barriers. Oh my God. Because we like get ideas from each other. And I love to argue with Harry about Trump,
I think it works. It works in the right environment. It works when it's enthusiastically embraced. When it's top down, I think it can fall apart. But I think that it really is. Things will change, and with 9/11, we didn't see until maybe years later what the ultimate impact would be, with kind of what the residual is, right, as the echo dies out. And I think it'll be with this as well. 5 years, what will things never really go back to?
Well, I do know that for a long time, you're going to be in the mix at every level, helping us figure out as a community, as a state, how we make things, how we protect our society, and how we function as a community. Pedro Soto, such a pleasure again to have you on Dateline New Haven at WNHH FM. I really love when you come on the show. I love
coming on the show. Thank you.
And I'm so glad you feel better.
Thanks.
I'm so glad you made it through COVID-19. I'm glad that your workforce on the shop floor stayed COVID-free. Way to go. And thank you for serving on Reopen Connecticut and helping us figure out as a state where we go next.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank our station manager, WNHH. This is Harry Droz, the miracle man behind the controls at New Haven Hospital, for providing financial support for this program. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free, from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us every day here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.